Shri Radha Govardhana Bhagwan ki, Krishna Balaram Bhagwan ki, Giriraj Maharaj ki, Narsinghadev Bhagwan ki, Gauranitai Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi. So today I will be speaking from the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 13, verses 120 to 123. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Mishra Vaishnava Shanta Alampata Sudha Danta, Dana Bhoge Nahi Abhimana, Putrera Prabhave Yata Dana Simila Tata, Vishnu Prite Dvije Dena Dana, Mishra Vaishnava Shanta Alampata Sudha Danta, Dana Bhoge Nahi Abhimana, Putrera Prabhave Yata Dana Asimila Tata, Vishnu Prite Dvija Dena Dana, Mishra, Jagannath Mishra, Vaishnava, a great devotee, Shanta, peaceful, Alampata, very regular, Shuddha, purified, Danta, controlled, Dhana Bhoge, in the matter of enjoying material happiness. Nahi, there is no Abhimana, desire, Putrera, of their son, Prabhave, by the influence, Yata, all, Dhana, riches, Asi, coming, Mile, gets, Tata, so much so, Vishnu Prite, for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu, Dvije, to the Brahmanas, Dena, gives, Dana, charity. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jagannath Mishra was an ideal Vaishnava. He was peaceful, restrained in sense gratification, pure and controlled. Therefore, he had no desire to enjoy material opulence. Whatever money came because of the influence of his transcendental son, he gave it in charity to the Brahmanas for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So please repeat. Jagannath Mishra was an ideal Vaishnava. He was peaceful, restrained in sense gratification, pure and controlled. Therefore, he had no desire to enjoy material opulence. Whatever money came because of the influence of his transcendental son, he gave it in charity to the Brahmanas for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Okay, so this verse doesn't have a purport, but I do want to bring out some points here which are important to discuss. And then we'll go all the way to the verse 123, which is the second last verse of this chapter. So this verse here, 120, the point at which we are at right now is towards the end of chapter 13, and chapter 13 is titled The Advent of Lord Chaitanya. So this chapter is describing all of the activities that happened before and during and after Lord Chaitanya's descent. So what's happened up until now is that Lord Chaitanya has appeared as described in the previous verses, and how Jagannath Mishra and Mother Sachi, they saw all the signs and they received great worship and respect from both human beings and demigods. So they saw all these signs before Lord Chaitanya was appearing. And now what is happening is that Lord Chaitanya is here, and Jagannath Mishra is being described as being, the father of Lord Chaitanya, is being described as being our ideal Vaishnava. So points that we can harvest from this verse is who is an ideal Vaishnava. And the points given are that he is peaceful. So an ideal Vaishnava is peaceful. We know it's described in the scriptures that as peaceful as the still water on a lake. So peaceful like that, not disturbed by external stimulus, by external items of sense gratification. Which brings to the next characteristic of an ideal Vaishnava, restrained in sense gratification. So even though the objects to enjoy are there, but our ideal Vaishnava is is able to control the senses, not really go crazy with enjoying the senses. Pure. So pure can be described in many ways, and the main way is by following the 4 regulative principles, by keeping pure in that way, and controlled. So controlled by being regulated in performance of devotional service. And controlled, can really be extrapolated to cover a lot of things, but the main thing is just like our sadhana. So our sadhana, which is chanting a certain number of rounds every day. We take a vow, those who have taken formal initiation, to chant 16 rounds a day. So that's one of the main sadhanas that we do, the main one that we do, hearing and chanting. And then other sadhana processes we might employ would be hearing a class every day, reading certain number of pages of the scriptures every day, doing something for the deities every day, for example. So all these devotional things, in particular looking back at the 9 processes of devotional service, so we can do this sadhana, and we can set a certain standard for ourselves, and then the point of being controlled is then being regular with it. Like, then control means like you do that same thing every day, and then if you can do more, you can do a little more, but the rule is don't back down from what you've already established for yourself as a standard. So that's the one way to progress in devotional life. And it's described that the 6 Goswamis, that their sadhana was like the lines on a rock, like as unchangeable as the line on a rock. So that's how strict and fixed they were in their sadhana processes. So an ideal Vaishnava, these are some characteristics of them. They have no desire to enjoy material opulence. Even though material opulence is present, they just don't have that desire. There's actually a Sanskrit word for that. I can't remember it, but it's just being disinterested, not being agitated, just not being. No, that's tolerance. I can't remember, but there's a word for it. But so not being agitated by any external sense gratification, just being peaceful. So this is actually one way we can introspect, and it's described in the scriptures that who doesn't have the desire to enjoy materially. Material enjoyment is basically, as we know, enjoying our senses and taking more than our needs. So who doesn't have this desire is one who has received the mercy of great devotees and Krishna. So if you see somebody and they're not really interested in enjoying themselves materially, you can think to yourself, oh, this person has received the mercy of Guru and Krishna and the Vaishnavas. So whatever money, why all these points are being made about Jagannath Mishra is that the point that is being made is that he received, Sachimata and Jagannath Mishra, they got lots of grains and lots of money because of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. But instead of wanting to enjoy this, he gave it in charity to the Brahmanas for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So the last point I want to make about this verse is, it came to me yesterday when I was actually reading the bedtime Krishna story, the Krishna book, to my children, and it says something very nice about charity in chapter 5 of the Krishna book. So, which is something that we can practically do. So it's really, really good for us to know this. So what's described about charity here is that in this material, so this is from the Krishna book, chapter 5. In the material world, we possess riches and wealth in many ways, but sometimes not in very honest and pious ways, because that is the nature of accumulating wealth. According to Vedic injunction, therefore, one should purify such wealth by giving cows and gold in charity to the Brahmanas, or whatever we have, like Jagannath Mishra gave money away that he got. So giving charity is to purify our wealth, which we would have accumulated, sometimes in not very honest and pious ways. And also something interesting is that that Lord Chaitanya appeared, and because of his appearance he was getting all this charity. So this is further explained here, that a newborn child is also purified by gifts of grain in charity to the Brahmanas. So when the parents give charity away, the newborn child is also purified. In this material world, it is to be understood that we are always living in a contaminated state. We therefore have to purify the duration of our lives, our possession of wealth, and ourself. We can purify our duration of life by taking daily bath and cleansing the body inside and outside. By distribution of charity, we can purify the possession of wealth. So the main point being made is that we give charity to purify our accumulated wealth and also to get blessings for the newborn child. Okay, verse 21. Lagnagani harshamati nilambara chakravati gupte kichu kahila mishrere mahapurushe rachina lagne ange bina bina dekhi aitaribe samsare. After calculating the birth moment of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nilambara Chakravarti privately said to Jagannath Mishra that he saw all the different symptoms of a great personality in both the body and birth moment of the child. Thus he understood that in the future this child would deliver all the three worlds. So Nilambara Chakravarti, he was the maternal grandfather of Lord Chaitanya. So Sachi Mata's father he was, and he saw on the body of this baby, Lord Chaitanya, he saw there were different signs, different marks. And he also did the calculation of the birth time, the time of appearance. So by those two things he knew, and he spoke this privately to Jagannath Mishra, Lord Chaitanya's father. He said to him that Lord Chaitanya is a great personality and he is going to deliver all the three worlds in the future. So text 122. Aiche Prabhu Sachi Ghare Kripaya Kailavatare Ye Iha Karaye Shravana Gaura Prabhu Dayamaya Tanre Hayena Sadaya Sepaya Tanhara Charna. In this way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of his causeless mercy, made his advent in the house of Sachi Devi. Lord Chaitanya is very merciful to anyone who hears this narration of his birth, and thus such a person attains the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is what we call Shruti Fal. Shruti means hearing and Fal means fruit, the fruit of hearing. So the scriptures are very, very magnanimous. The scriptures are the mother and they lead us to Krishna, and the scriptures as a mother keep giving us gifts. And this gift, Shruti Fal, in this particular chapter is that by hearing of the birth of Lord Chaitanya, this person, out of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and we do know that Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful incarnation, very merciful. So out of his mercy, he allows the people who hear this narration of his birth to attain the lotus feet of the Lord. So it doesn't say to start attaining, doesn't say puts them on the path, but actually very strongly states attains the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's the destination of the cherished desire and destination of devotees, to attain the lotus feet of the Lord. So we get this from hearing. And this text 123, which is the last verse I'll be covering today. So this is going to further explain about hearing. Paya manusha janma yena sune gaura guna hena janma tare vartya haila Paya amrita dhuni piye vishagarta pani janmiya se kene nahi maila. Anyone who attains a human body but does not take to the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is baffled in his opportunity. Amrita Dhuni is a flowing river of the nectar of devotional service. If after getting a human body one drinks the water in a poison pit of material happiness instead of the water of such a river, it would be better for him not to have lived but to have died a long time ago. So this is the main verse which has a purport. So I will ask everybody to please repeat the translation of this verse with me. Anyone who attains a human body but does not take to the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is baffled in his opportunity. Amrita Dhuni is a flowing river of the nectar of devotional service. If after getting a human body, one drinks the water in a poison pit of material happiness, instead of the water of such a river, it would be better for him not to have lived, but to have died long ago. Okay. So I'll actually explain a few things before we get, because the purport is really wonderfully full of nice explanations too. So as we have read, this human form of life, and as we know, this human form of life is a great opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's one of the portals. We have this body which has this special feature of higher intelligence, and this higher intelligence is what we need to use to become devotees. To actually not become devotees, we already are devotees, we've just forgotten that. To actually rediscover our transcendental nature and reconnect with the Lord. So this is the opportunity we have in this human life, which no other species of life has in this way. So so what is described is, if one does not hear about Lord Chaitanya, then their human life is a lost opportunity. And also that if instead of hearing and instead of performing devotional service, if we actually use that same time in material sense enjoyment, then it is described as drinking from a poison pit. Whereas devotional service is like a flowing river of nectar. So Amrita Dhuni. So instead we are being urged to drink from this sweet flowing river, Amrita Dhuni, rather than the poison pit of material enjoyment. So a person who drinks from the poison pit of material sense enjoyment, that person is described that it's better that he wasn't born, that he should have just died a while ago, a long time ago, rather than having wasted his human form of life. So wasting the human form of life, and that will be covered in this purport, wasting this opportunity, it's a very precious opportunity. It's after 4 million, how many species? 8,400,000 species of life that we get this human form. And we evolve through all the species before we come to this higher human form. And if we don't use it, then we basically fall back again. So then we go through the whole cycle and then we come up again. So, it's a wasted opportunity. So we are being urged not to waste our time but to engage in devotional service. So different verses are being quoted in this purport. And one verse is that Prabhupada Saraswati, he said the following verse, and this is what he said in his book, the Caitanya Caritamrita, He said that this material world is without Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna consciousness personified. Therefore, if a very learned scholar or scientist does not understand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, certainly he is wandering uselessly in this world. So even if one may have a lot of material knowledge, very learned scholar, or a scientist, but they don't understand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is described to be wandering uselessly in this world. A person who does not take advantage of the nectar of devotional service overflowing during the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cult is certainly the poorest of the poor. The advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is just like an expanding ocean of nectar. One who does not collect the valuable jewels within this ocean is certainly the poorest of the poor. So there is material wealth and then there is spiritual wealth. We know quite well what material wealth looks like, and we often use it to define success. That, oh, they've got a nice car, they've got a big house, they've got $1 million in their account, they've got like so many different investment properties. That's what we use to sort of define material wealth. We know that well. Spiritual wealth, do we know what that looks like? What does spiritual wealth look like? So we should know, right? Because we are trying to get spiritual wealth. So spiritual wealth looks like yes, those are the qualities of a Brahmana. Yes, those are the qualities of a Brahmana. No, spiritual wealth looks like having devotional service. Devotional service. Somebody engaged in devotional service is wealthy. Secondly, hearing and collecting the valuable jewels. So hearing, like the first verse that we talked about, I said these are what the qualities of an ideal Vaishnava is, and Jagannath Mishra's qualities were all described. So by actually hearing, what we are doing is we are collecting jewels from the ocean, or collecting jewels, the gems of hearing, the pearls of wisdom. We are described, that's how it's described, that you collect pearls of wisdom. So the jewels of hearing, when we collect all of that, then we are described as wealthy. So jewels of hearing mean that we have heard the scriptures, but not have we heard it, we have actually realized it. And then we are practicing it. So that's the jewel of spiritual life, of actually being wealthy in spiritual life. Having devotional service is our greatest wealth, firstly. And then hearing, this particular verse is really focusing on hearing, which we know is the first transcendental 9 processes of devotional service. So that Lord Chaitanya's appearance, it's like this ocean, this big ocean of nectar. And that one needs to go and collect the valuable jewels within this ocean. So hearing of the appearance of Lord Chaitanya and learning all the lessons that comes along with that is collecting these valuable jewels, spending our time writing it down, then looking back at it, trying to understand what it means, hearing from people who are realized, seeing how they put it in practice in their life, practicing devotional service. So that is what spiritual wealth looks like. And that one who doesn't do this, one who doesn't collect these pearls of wisdom, these jewels of Shruti, if one doesn't collect this, then they are the poorest of the poor. So this is seen through the eyes of scripture. Who is poor and who is rich? So in the Bhagavatam it is stated that a person who has no connection with Krishna consciousness may be a very great personality in the so-called human society, but actually he is no better than a great animal. Such big animals are generally praised by other animals like dogs, hogs, camels and asses. A person who does not lend his oral reception to hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be considered to have ear holes like holes in a field. Although the person has a tongue, it is like the tongue of a frog, which unnecessarily creates a disturbance by croaking, inviting the snake of death. Similarly, a person who neither takes advantage of the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees, nor smells the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, must be considered dead, even though he is supposedly working. In the Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, chapter 1, verse 4, it states, "Who but the animal killer or the killer of the soul will not care to hear glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Such glorification is enjoyed by persons liberated from the contamination of this material world." Similarly, in the 3rd canto, chapter 23, verse 56, in the Bhagavatam, it is stated, "Although a person is apparently living, if he does not serve the lotus feet of great devotees, he is to be considered a dead body." So, in the Bhagavatam, in Canto 2, Chapter 3, verses 19, 20 and 23, what is said is that just like a big animal, other animals are scared of a big animal. Like a lion is called the king of the jungle and other animals are scared of it. But a lion, a human being who doesn't hear, who doesn't take out the time to hear about the Lord, is just like a big animal. That's what is described. So no better than an animal. Because going back to basics, it's like all living entities eat, sleep, mate and defend. So human beings also do the same thing as a living entity. But if we're doing only that, then we are no better than an animal. So what we actually need to be doing is hearing about the Lord, the activities of the Lord, all his qualities and all the philosophy associated with the Lord, his appearance, his disappearance, all his activities, because this has the potency to take us back to the spiritual world. It also gives us the association of great devotees like Srila Prabhupada, who Prabhupada said he left all his devotional ecstasies in his purports. So it gives us his association and the association of all the other great acharyas in our line. So by association like this and by hearing, we go back to Godhead. So otherwise, it's said that these holes that we have, our ear holes, are just like holes in a field. You know, on the ground when you walk, there are holes. It's just useless. Otherwise, if we don't use our ears to hear about the Lord. And although that human who doesn't hear about the Lord's glories, although that person has a tongue, it's like the tongue of a frog, because a frog croaks. So this metaphor that a croaking frog invites the snake of death is also used in the nectar of instruction in one of the early verses. And what it is that when a frog croaks, then snakes know where it is. And because of that noise, the snakes come closer and therefore they eat the frog. So the frog would have been wise to just keep silent. So if we are just croaking, using our tongues to just croak, that's what it is if it's not katha, if it's not Krishna katha. So it's prajalpa, it's talks not connected to the Lord. So if we are using our tongues, but not using our tongues to speak of the Lord, and his activities and his glories and his qualities, his Nam, Rupa, Guna, Lila. If we don't talk about all these things, then our tongues are just like the tongue of a frog. And by using that tongue, we will croak soon. Now, I use the word croak here in the slang definition of it, which croak means to die. The slang definition is you'll just die. So, because we are wasting our precious breath, and we are wasting it in prajalpa. And if we use that same time, that same breath, that same tongue, those same ears, just turned it around and used it to glorify the Lord, then it's all perfect. Then we are not wasting our time. Then we are not wandering like an aimless animal. Then our life has value. Then we are maximizing this opportunity that we have. Otherwise, we are just wasting this human form of life. So, other things that are described, so these are the things we actually need to be doing. That we need to be, we need to be taking the dust of lotus feet of great devotees, physically as well as metaphorically. So taking the dust means you actually, yes, you touch their feet, you put the dust of their feet on your head. My Guru Maharaji often makes a joke that Prabhupada was walking on a beach and he literally collected the sand in his footprints and ate it. So he literally ate the dust of Prabhupada's foot. And metaphorically, the real meaning of it is to actually try to follow their example, take the gist of what they're doing and try to do that in our lives as well. And so by taking advantage of the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees, we make progress by smelling the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. This is also a great thing that draws us closer to the Lord. We know that there's a story about the 4 Kumaras, and they just got a whiff of the scent of the lotus feet, of the tulsi leaves offered with sandalwood pulp to Krishna's feet, and they got a whiff of that, and that attracted them to Krishna. So, smelling the tulsi leaves offered to the Lord, if we don't do this, we are considered to be dead, even though we are supposedly living. Now, one thing that is explained here is who is the killer of the soul? The killer of the soul, one way to look at it is the 2 definitions given. One is a person who kills animals or kills other human beings, they kill. Another, the real definition is killer of the soul is that we are killing our souls if we don't hear. So someone who doesn't hear about the Lord is killing his soul. So how so? Because hearing is this river of nectar, Amrita. So hearing is what actually nourishes our spiritual life. Hearing is what gives us everything, because at the end of the day, what do we have? I mean, if we look at it, Prabhupada is not here physically, but he is here in his books. He is here in his instructions. He is here in the heart of devotees. And he is here in all the service that he has done, and which is still being maintained and continued. So Prabhupada is here in all of that. What is nourishing us is that association that we have with Prabhupada through all these things. So hearing is the most important devotional service that we could be doing. And if we don't, then we are being described as animal killers. So using our time wisely to hear is actually living life. And also the other thing is that we are also living life if we serve the lotus feet of great devotees. So by serving devotees and by hearing, we make great spiritual progress. Lord Chaitanya's 3 main points Lord Chaitanya made was Jiva Doya, Nama Ruchi and Vaishnava Seva. So Jiva Doya is having mercy for living entities and engaging them in devotional service. Nama Ruchi is having a taste for the holy name, and Vaishnava Seva, we get Jiva Doya, we get Nama Ruchi by serving the devotees. So serving the devotees is really important. And here it is said, serving the lotus feet of great devotees. So how do we know who a great devotee is? We know by their speech, we know by their activities, and we know by how they spend their time. So we need to be not judgmental, but just protective of our spiritual life. And we need to choose carefully. Okay, I will stop here. If anybody has anything they would like to say, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Yes, Prabhu? I think we'll wait for the mic.
The first verse, it was talking about business which includes cheating. So I once met a man who came to the temple and was giving charity to deities because he was having a service station where they sell jerky and meat. So is that acceptable, or where is the threshold?
Where do you draw the line? Yeah. So what Prabhu is saying is that somebody was selling meat and then trying to get that purified by coming to offer money to the Lord. So and where do we draw the line there? So in the Bhagavad Gita it's described that we serve the Lord to whatever extent we can in the Karma Yoga section of Bhagavad Gita. So it's described that people serve with their words, their time, their money, their intelligence, and that people who are unable to be directly engaged in devotional service at that point in time, that they can serve in whatever way they are capable of. Different rules apply to different people at different stages of self-realization. For example, if somebody who knows better, who knows better, like who's already a practicing devotee and has already taken vows, but is still sinning by breaking the principles, in particular, meat, fish or eggs, alcohol, tea or coffee, gambling, illicit sex. So by doing that, that person gets a greater sin, gets a greater reaction. Whereas a person who knows better, but who is not fully committed, who hasn't taken vows, they do get a reaction, but a lesser reaction. And also that no matter how, but if it's always better to offer to the Lord. Always better to offer to the Lord, no matter how, even if it's obtained in unhealthy ways, impious ways. That is always better to offer to the Lord. So gradually, that person, by doing that, should be getting the merit of his pious activities and should progressively be getting higher and higher. And in some lifetime, if not in this lifetime, they can come to the stage of being fully engaged in devotional service. But the thing is that anything and everything should be given to the Lord. It shouldn't be obtained in horrible ways. It should be obtained as much as possible. That's why it's hard for devotees to find employment. We really have to be selective as to what employment we will take. But for as much as possible, it should be offered to the Lord, and gradually the purification will come. Happy with that? Would anybody like to add anything to that? That's my understanding. Yeah, so in the Karma Yoga, it's described there in the Bhagavad Gita that we can just engage according to our capabilities at that point in time. And it is like, we know that transcendental devotional service, which we are very, very fortunate we have that knowledge, that by doing that, we are on the supersonic, like the bullet train, the big the quickest way possible to go back to Godhead. All the other ways, like that's karma yoga, you do something, you give the fruits to Krishna in an attempt to try to purify that. It's okay, but it's not perfect. But it'll get there slowly. Okay, while somebody else is coming up with a question, one thing I wanted to say, that this Amrita Dhuni, this river of devotional service that we're supposed to be drinking from, why is it this nectar? Why is it this Amrita Dhuni? So that comes back to the characteristics of pure devotional service. So why is devotional service so pure and so nectarian and so sweet? Why? Because there is no higher taste. There's really no higher taste. And in the nectar of devotion, it's described by Rupa Goswami that the 6 characteristics of devotional service, which is really, really, really good to know. That pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. That pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. Pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Those in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. Pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. So, 2 things. Firstly, out of these 6 characteristics, but this is why devotional service is so sweet and so pleasure-giving, because it gives relief from all kinds of material distress. So we are suffering so much in this material world. It's described as dukhalayam ashashvatam. And also that pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. So that's what we're all hankering for, pleasure. Prabhu, you want to say something?
I think you covered everything, but I was just listening to a class yesterday. The Prophet was saying at this point in our life, we don't have love of God. At least I can certainly attest to that. Others know. But he said that by rendering service, that we display that some sort of degree of love. In any form of love, isn't it? We're rendering some service to the love. So when we render service, we're on the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you were saying, firstly we get that higher taste, which we're looking for, but then we're on the way to experiencing it. And also, at the event yesterday, in someone else's class, he was quoting Jamunacharya. This is a point you made earlier, and apparently Jamunacharya said, I'm not interested in what you can do in one day, I'm interested in what you do every day.
What was the last thing, Prabhu?
It doesn't matter what you can do in one day,
right,
but what you do every day.
Right.
So like with your sadhana and so on.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for that. Okay. If anyone has anything else to say? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Gauranitai Bhagwan ki Jai, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Hari Hari Bol.